So I just want to quickly start off with something that Felicia and I were talking about yesterday. Can't remember if I ever mentioned this little device that I use for heights. It's on the notes layer. Just if you see this, you'll see it's down here on the notes layer, and it really only ever shows up if you click on the working tab. If you click scene, it goes away, and really it's just meant to be a reference. And it really came about with Ocean Reef because we were very height sensitive in a lot of things down there. So it's just something that worked out really well for that I use in almost all my projects, especially when there's very height sensitive things. And the way that this works, just to be aware, if you wanted to use it, first thing to note that it is a component, so that you can make copies of it around your model, and if you update one, they all update. But really, the intent is, I'm just going to hide the model, that you have, basically, it's the exact same thing as you would do in AutoCAD, that you're showing, where your second floor is, whether it's 12 or 14. And I try to have some standard stuff built into here to make it easy. Where you have your 0, 0 here, 12 inches above grade. And then you can just, even though these look like lines, they're actually a group of a line, just so that you can actually move these around without it attaching to this. It's just make it easier. So anyway, with that said, I have, where is it? This SketchUp file here, which on the Boca server, I believe, is on the M drive, where we keep our SketchUp library. So library SketchUp, library collections, and this one here is blocks miscellaneous elevation tags. And all this is meant to do is, this is the exact same thing, but not as a component, just the pieces. And I try to have a bunch of preset dimensions, if you will, in here, as well as wording like crown of road, top of beam, first floor, second floor, existing grade, all that good kind of stuff, so that you can basically just copy and paste these wherever you need to. Just as a quick note, these are all center justified, and if you basically move by this point here, so if I move this one and I place it at the end point here, you see that it all fits in. And similarly, this, if it's something in the middle, if I grab it by the midpoint in the group and bring it up to the end point there, it's all the same thing. And last piece on it, the shorter line versus the longer line was meant as a guide for, as you can imagine, the top of windows and doors. So if you have 10'2", you can just move it up and all that good kind of stuff. The 8.0 here is only shown if you're doing frame, and you just replace it with the 8.2 and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, it's just not sure if I talked about it much before, but wanted to make sure that I just mentioned it so that you guys see it. And this way, if you ever start a project and you see this thing in here, you know what it's actually used for and how to use it. So now, off to the fun stuff for the day. We got a lot to do. We are going to look at building 3D roofs, and this and the next week doing 3D walls, 3D wall elements, are what I would catalog under luxury items that if you have time and or you are knowing that you're going to build a rendered model and you're going to do some renderings, this is just such a great way to add extra layer of depth and realism to your model. By no means is it anything that's necessary, and I certainly would not add them while you're designing, but doing it more as you, almost the last thing that you're going to do, finalizing the model, that you put these roof elements in. Just like, again, like just about everything else I do, this is just another collection of things, and this one's blocks, roofing, roof parts. And inside of here, I have a standing seam roof. I have a flat tile roof, and as well as some additional parts, and we're going to get into some of this in just a minute. As well as I'm going to show doing barrel tile, that sort of thing. If you happen to have a project that needs to show what are these called, the solar panels on the roof, I have those in here. Different venting kinds of things. And this was all just put in here to show, as I think all work together as a grouping within a particular project. I even did this scallop detail that's used in some projects of med type of style, so I built that and had those in there. So anyways, just a lot of roofing parts. Really the main pieces I use in here are going to be the standing seam and the flat tile roof. This is here, the barrel tile is more of just a reference because you'll see that it's actually built a different way. And so, but we're basically going to build those 3 roofs on our project right now. So jumping over here, so this is our project. This is pretty much where we left off last week, working on it. And you know, it looks great, but you can imagine doing a rendering, the roof is going to look pretty flat. So again, this is the intent of having just a higher quality rendering and or presentation. Even in SketchUp, it looks so much better if you have the ability and time to do it. So really the first thing that I do to do this, and this is all going to sound, I think, convoluted and time-consuming, and to some degree it is, but once you get the hang of it, it actually goes pretty quick. And it's, like I said, that's why I categorize this thing as a luxury item. But as you can see here, this is my roof group. As we've talked before, I like to put everything into groups. My roof group, I actually will turn into a component. So now you see that this is a component. And the nice thing about this, what this allows me to do, is I can go to Save As, and I can save this into my project folder as its own roof element. Let me just see if I can get to it real quick. So yes, I'm saving it here in my 3D roofs, and I actually already have it saved out, but just to show you, I usually save out this thing called roof. And really what this is going to do, it's going to isolate the roof away from the rest of my model completely, and allows me a lot of speed to work on this. And if you remember the way we worked with component replacement in previous things with the lights and whatnot, ultimately when I'm done, I can save out my new 3-dimensional roof and do a component replacement, and it'll overlay my new 3D roof directly on top of it. So that's how the process is really going to work. Here's the exported roof, and to be more specific, this right here is what was exported, and everything else are items that I built, and then I pre-built a lot of it just to save time, but I'm going to show you exactly what I did in the process and how to do it. So from here, you can see this is the actual roof that we have over there. There's nothing different about it at all. It's literally the exact same roof. But what I'll do is I'll grab just the roof planes. I don't want to worry about eaves or any of that other kind of stuff. Do Control-C for copy, get out of the group, Control-V for paste, and then I'll copy this over. And that's basically what I have here. So I did that with all these pieces, except for what I slightly did different, because I copied these over 150 feet. Again, it doesn't really matter what number you use. I just used 150 feet. But I have this, what's interesting here is I have this lower condition, this roof right here that's a little bit lower than this upper roof. And similarly, this turret is directly above this, and I really want to be able to separate these roofs out So this lower roof and this turret, I only copied over 100 feet instead of 150. Again, the numbers don't matter. It's just being consistent and remembering what you do. So you know how to basically put all the puzzle pieces back together. Because from here, you see that these roofs, even though they're now just two-dimensional planes kind of all put together, they still have a three-dimensional quality to them. And what I did over here, this next step, this group of stuff right here, is the exact same thing as these roofs here, but they've been flattened. And getting into another plugin, if you guys haven't ever used it, there's some pretty cool features on, I believe they're called Architect Tools. This one right here. So let's see if I make sure you bring it up here. Just always, I think works out well to be able to see exactly the one that I download so that you guys can use the same one. And there's actually quite a large number of things that you can do with this, and I really only use one, but there's so many other things that you can do. But it's this one here, this Architect's Tools by TomTom, and these are all the different features that you can use with it. And it's actually something I want to explore a little more personally, but what I really got it for initially was this flattened selection. And so that's what I'm going to focus on right here. And when I flatten it, you'll see why I copied these, or I moved these to the side just a little bit. Because to go from here to here, I'm just going to make this copy real quick. I can go to my extensions, and then let's see, Architect's Tools. I don't know where they are. I have hotkeys. Tools. Yeah, to be honest, I'm not even sure where they are because, again, I don't ever use them this way. But with that said, I have my hotkey set up as alternate F for, in fact, that'll be a good way to find it. Window preferences. Again, just as a reminder, you can always do a filter under SketchUp preferences. Shortcuts, I'm typing in flatten. So you'll see extensions, Architect Tools, flatten selection. So it is where I thought it was. And you see assigned is alternate F. So I'm just going to cancel this. Extensions. I might have just glanced over it then. Oh, here they are. Yeah, Architect's Tools and then flatten selection. So that's what I'm using. And see, when I click it, they all go paper thin. If you see that. In fact, you can see right here, this is a prime example of why I copied them over. I actually needed to copy this over a little bit further because I don't want them on top of each other like this. So I'm going to move this one over an additional 10 feet. And so that's doing all that basically gives me this. And then from there, the next thing I would do is essentially extruding these into three-dimensional pieces. So that's why I flattened them, is it gives me an easy way to create these three-dimensional pieces. And going all the way back to one of our initial discussions on solid tools, this is going to give me my cutting boxes that will perfectly shape my roofs. And so to reiterate, just to start it off, the way we started the discussion, that this is going to sound very convoluted and kind of time-consuming, and it definitely seems that way in the discussion of the process. But you'll see that I've actually completed 2 different versions of three-dimensional roofs, and I think in total this process took me about half an hour. So, you know, ultimately, once you start getting familiar with this and used to it, you can move through things pretty quickly. But that's jumping ahead. I'm going to show you how we do it. So the reason for making these cutting boxes is so that I can shape very easily the roofs. And so even though I pre-created these roofs, I actually left this section off right here so that we can build this piece together, and I did it on both of them just to show you the process, and then from there you can basically see how to do the rest of it. So in going back to the roof parts, that's what this is here is just a big slab of standing seam roof and then this one's a big slab of flat tile roof. And I copy both of those in, and that's what each of these are here. And the first thing I do before you do anything else is make sure that these are the same slopes, in which this one I know is not, but I'm going to show you how I make it the same slope. I just grab it and place it directly on the corner, and from there I'll slide it over just to a peak, and what this is going to do is give me an ability to snap to something. So you can see right off the bat how I'm probably working on a 512 and this is probably a 612. So from here I was going to jump inside of this group, and I'll rotate by this point here because that's exactly touching my eave, and then I'll just touch anywhere on the line and drop it down to this point, and now that gives me a perfectly sloped set of roof tile massing. And do the same thing over here. I don't need to go do it a second time, but this one you see is coming in as a 412, and I'd basically do the exact same process and make this, into a 512. From there, I'll move this anywhere off screen and then copy it. In fact, let me just grab one and show you. Like, I'll just take this and rotate it 90 degrees with a copy, and then do 3x. And now you see that I have the 4 main directions that I need with everything all perfectly lined up. So that's that's how you start getting these pieces put together so that you can move pretty quickly. And really, this is going to make a lot more sense once you really start getting into it. This is a process I've been working on over the last couple of years, and definitely was not this straightforward to me when I initially started it. It just takes time to kind of get used to it. But as you can see, all I need to do now is just grab a piece. I'm going to grab the corner and drop it in on a corner. But I'm going to slide it over. It doesn't matter how far, just slide it over some distance so that we're well past the actual corner. And now, here comes the fun part, is I just simply move this up. In this case, I know it's 4,200 feet, or 350 feet. So 4,200 inches, excuse me, 350 feet. And I can use this cutting box. There's actually one piece I want to show that this piece already has, that I kind of skipped a step that you didn't see. So if I pull this, so this is going to be my cutting box. I'm going to pull this over the distance I need to, and I'm going to turn it into a group, just drop it down. And again, these are just my cutting boxes, so there's these heights and all that kind of stuff really don't matter. I just want to get them into the exact place that I need them. So you can see this triangle was built exactly off of my flattened roof. And I can't use this just yet because you'll see that my 3-dimensional roof actually sticks out past. See if I can get a good zoom in on it. I get this little bit of piece that sticks out past everything. So if I were to take this roof and this cutting box and do an intersection, you can see that it cuts that edge off, and I don't want to do that. So what I need to do is just pull this out some distance. It doesn't really matter what, just enough to cover it. And then you just need to make these triangles back true again. And so all I'm doing is grabbing the straight line and moving it. I'm holding shift on the axes and touching this plane, and it's putting it back in the exact place. So now I have that exact shape, and it's projected past my roof. So now all I have to do is grab this triangle, this section of roof, and do an intersect, and I have a 3D roof section that's perfectly cut precision cut to my roof. And you see I still have that edge nice and clean. And what's great about this is these triangles are one thing, but a piece of roof like this could be very difficult to build. In fact, I'm going to erase that one and do that process again, so you can see on a slightly more complex roof just how easy this process makes it. Is I'm going to drop it right here on the corner. I'll slide it over again, just so that we're not right on the corner, but sliding it over. And then from here, I have this cutting box already built, and this actually already has the extensions built in. So maybe I'll show you how I built those extensions in one more time. So this is just the flattened section of roof. There's nothing special about it. It's just that flattened section of roof, but it has that perfect shape that I need. And I'm just gonna basically push-pull it much further than what I need, just so I have a large box to work with. Turn it into a group so I can use it in my solid tools. And now from here, though, let me just grab this triangle as an example right next to it. So if you remember, when I did this one, I pulled this piece out and I had to adjust both sides. And just by doing this, I can adjust both sides pretty quickly. But in this case, I don't need to adjust both sides, because this right here I want to essentially act as a gable, and I want this to essentially act as a gable. But these sides I will need projected out. So I can just pull these out, again, whatever dimension, doesn't really matter. And now I just need to adjust the triangle on these outer sides. And so once I have that, get rid of all this other junk that I don't need. Moving this into place, now it's just a matter of clicking the two pieces I want, that slab of roof and this triangle, and then doing my intersect in my solid tools, and there you go. I have a roof that perfectly fits around that shape that I needed to deal with. So again, this is just, it definitely is not something you would do if you're in a hurry to complete something, because it's going to take some time to get familiar with this process, and it's not even anything that you have to do, but it's something that I wanted to show and have it available to you so that you can understand quick, easy ways to add a lot of detail into your model. And then really, if you want to take it to the next level, going back to my roof parts, you see on the flat tile roof I have 3x12 through 12x12, and I have these hip line ridge caps already built, and you just grab the ones that you need, and from there you just they're each individual components, but if you grab one and copy it from point to point, you then can add however many you need to get the height of the hip line that you have. And that's what I did here. And so now you can see the level of detail that's been added to this model, especially if we're going to talk about doing renderings. There's just so much detail that's been added to this. And similarly, let's get to that in a second. Similarly, I'd have just a flat ridge cap all the way here on this side, and you just add it in on any of your ridges, which I have one here and here. So that's in total, this roof, when I was building it for this class to get ready, I think this took me about 20 minutes to get this roof built. And so the more you practice it, you can see that you can add a lot of detail in just a little bit of time. So the question was asking how I did the round one, and honestly the round one's even easier, because all I did was, let me jump back here. So this is, again, my flat tile area here, and you see I have a profile, of how I built this basically. And so what I did was I placed that profile here. If you can see that, it's just a profile sitting perfectly on the axes, and just cut to the precise height of this. And then from there, copied it over. Let me pull it back. I don't see where it copied. Hang on. Here we go. So I'll just copy it. Let me go 300 feet, and I'm going to copy my circle up, even though I made this circle into a column. I really didn't need to. I didn't need to extrude it at all. I really just need the shape of the turret. So I'm going to copy that and then go inside this group and paste it. And just like any other trim, I'm going to select this and then hit F for my follow me command. And in just a second, if you remember, my turret I have built as a pretty high segment count, so it had to go through all the segments. But that's it. It's just simply using the follow me command. And here I'm just going to use my clean command, which we've used many times now. And you see it gets rid of that line, and hit Shift R to reverse faces. And there it is on the round. So it's pretty quick and simple. In fact, it's even easier than the rest of these. And honestly, even though I built this roof the same way I just showed you, if you really wanted to, you could actually take this piece and do the same thing of just doing a follow me command around a rectangle. Other than this piece would get a little wonky because you'd have to build an extension onto it, but the other three could simply have been just follow me command. And just to show you what that would look like, if I pull it up, say to here, and in fact, maybe I'll do all four sides. So if I just draw a rectangle around here, now understand that this doesn't go all the way, so maybe I gotta just add a little bit more onto this thing. There we go. And so now if I select this and do a follow me command around here, this is a very quick way of building that same roof. Now that works if you have the luxury of a perfectly rectangular roof, but you can see that would not work for building this piece of roof right here. It would have worked going around here. So you can find what pieces you can actually build even quicker by using the follow me command, and then building some of these more individually, which would have been fine as well. So that was a great question, Luis. So yeah, so that's yes. Go ahead. Yeah. So the right. So the question was, could this roof have been built the same way as I built this roof, and then using subtraction instead of the intersect command? And absolutely, it definitely would have worked. Just in fact, I'll build it right now. I'm just going to undo this roof just so I can grab this profile. Let's see here. I'm just going to build this real quick. And so it's a great, and that's I love the way that the question, because it's all about thinking. As we all know, there's like 100 different ways to do stuff, and so it's always thinking about what's the quickest way. And sometimes it's a combination of things. So sometimes it might be doing a follow me command combined with some other pieces. So that's a great way of thinking about it. So here we go. I'm going to build this, and I have that nice piece of roof there. And now I'm going to take this roof. I'm going to copy it over. I think it was 2400. Oops, 1200. There we go. This is the piece I want. And so now I would kind of do the reverse. I'm just going to draw straight lines coming out. And now instead of building the roof as an extrusion, I want to build the negative as an extrusion. And so I'm just going to take this piece and put it back. Oops, too far. And now subtract this. This isn't a solid. It's kind of hard to see. I'm going to zoom in. It wasn't a solid because, in fact, I can hide this face. Because you can see it added this plane in right here. And so I just need to erase out these two lines and it'll make it a solid. And then from there I can delete that from that. And it's exactly the same roof and a little quicker. So that's again another great question. As we know that this house that we're building is definitely the extreme end of simplicity, and a lot of our roofs are never going to be this simple, but it's a great way of looking at it of where are the easy key pieces that I can do this with, and if I can, great, because it is much quicker, and if I can't, then you have the way that will always work, essentially the brute force way. And similar, I'm just going to grab this piece here, showing you the same thing with my standing seam roof. It's the exact same thing, just placing it where I need to, and then moving it over. And this piece already has the extensions built in, so we're good there. And I'm just going to delete that out. Whoops, not delete. Intersect with this. And that creates that roof. As far as the tower that goes, the round portion, the way I built that, zoom in over here, it's actually very, very similar, but I have two pieces that I had to build. You see, I have this very thin, what essentially would be the thickness of the metal roofing itself, not the standing seam. I have it as 1/4 of an inch, so it's definitely very exaggerated to the thickness of the metal, but dealing with anything less than 1/4 is tough in SketchUp. And then I have this generic kind of standing seam piece I built. And this piece right here, I just did a follow me, which gave thickness to the roof, and I'll show you on the one I built. And so that's all this is right here. You can see that there's just 1/4 inch thick piece of metal cap, if you will, sitting on top, just simply using the follow me command. And then these are the standing seams that I copied one over and copied it, did a rotation copy of 15 degrees, and I think that it's 24, if I'm not mistaken. 360 divided by 15. Yeah, 24, so I did an additional copy of 23, and that's how I got my standing seams copied around. Does that make sense? I know it's a lot I'm throwing at you, but in fact, we can build this again real quick too. So I'm just copy this up here. So this is just the outline shape of my tower. I'm going to copy this whole group over, which this houses my thickness of the metal as well as my standing seam. I'm going to make a copy of the circle so I can go inside the group and paste, and then simply selecting this and using my follow me command. So I clean up the material real quick. And I'm going to repaint this. So, whoa, that's not what I wanted. Where's the material I want? You grabbed the wrong one. There we go. So you can see that just simply made a quick follow me to create a little bit of a thickness for the material and the metal. And then from here, I'm just going to do about the center point. I'm going to rotate, hitting control. If you see the plus sign that's there, see how that plus sign comes and goes by hitting control. Rotating it 15 degrees with a 23x copy, and there's my standing seam. So that's all that one was. And then to add in the seam caps, I have all my lines ready here, but all that is taking this and just grabbing all of my hip lines and ridge lines. You just want the outies, not the innies, and copy them over, and that's all that is. And then from there you can either take the profile of something like this, which is inside of this roof parts here. You see I have a couple of them going on here, and just taking that copy and putting it on the line and doing a follow me around it. Or I can take just half of it, and I need to get this for you guys, at least on the laptop, if not everybody's machine. This profile builder that we've talked about before. I have a profile already built in here called Metal Seam Cap, and all I do is hit Build Along Path, and it builds it along a path. So you can see, oops, didn't quite get that piece there. There we go. So what seemingly is convoluted and takes a long time, really, once you find the shortcuts, you can really make these things pretty quick. So there's, your standing seam caps, a matter of seconds. And again, that just adds quite a bit of detail to this thing here. So it's a very long, convoluted explanation for something ultimately it's pretty simple, but it's definitely going to take some practice and getting used to it. And so what's nice is now I'm just going to grab these pieces here that, actually before I do that, I'm just going to do save a copy as, because I want to save a copy of this roof with all of the parts in case I ever need to go back to it. But what I'm going to do now is these two final roofs that I've made, I'm going to put them back over top of my original roof. So now I have my original roof, I have standing seam roof, and I have my flat tile roof all sitting right here on top of each other. And I'm going to erase everything else out of here because I don't need it anymore. Yep. So the question was, what if we need to modify the roof? How do we? Sure. And so it's inevitable, right? It's going to happen. It's just the way that we work here in this firm. Sorry, this wasn't quite sitting on my roof properly. There we go. So that's a great question, and a lot of what I do is with the intent of being able to modify things and work on things, very easy later on. So it's a great question to have, so that you're always thinking that way. So with that, I'm going to pull these roofs apart real quick. Here's my standing seam. Let's move this 100 feet, and we'll move this 100 feet this way. So with that, partly the reason why I build these in their own sections so I can hide the model. So I have this piece of roof, this piece of roof, that whatever pieces of the roof change, I only need to rebuild those pieces. So this isn't all one giant 3D roof. These are essentially Legos. And if, say, the back piece changes, then I just delete out the back pieces and rebuild those. Sometimes rebuilding is a lot quicker than actually trying to fix something, in my estimation, but that really becomes a judgment call of, is it going to be quicker for me to fix it or quicker for me to rebuild it? So that's kind of the reason why I work the way I do, in that I have these individual pieces that I can attack and change and alter as I need to. So maybe another class I'll try and, maybe once we're done with this project in a couple of weeks, maybe we'll come back and alter it and say, now that we're done with the model, what happens when we have changes? And we can look at that a little bit further then, of how to adjust and alter not just the roofs, but the whole model. But I hopefully that answers the question in the short term. So before I bring this into my model, in which I could be done and ready to go, but since I have two different roofs in here, maybe the client's just not sure what kind of roof they want, or Mitch isn't sure what kind of roof he wants to show and wants to show both. I'm actually going to make a layer in here called roof option 01, and we'll add another one of roof option 02. Whoops, I didn't mean to turn my layers off. There we go. And then I'm going to bring in my entity info. So now that I'm holding on to the standing seam one, we'll call that one roof option 1, and then I'll do my flat tile and we'll call that one roof option 2. We've done the options before, and we'll definitely get into options a little deeper later on, but I think we've seen it a little bit previously, so you think you guys know what I'm doing. So I'm going to put all the roofs on top of each other now, and if you remember the base roof, I'm going to turn my two option roofs off for a second. So this base roof here is just on layer 0. I'm just going to group that all together. So this is just my generic base three-dimensional roof, and then turn my other layers on, and I have essentially material, three-dimensional material sitting on top of it. So from there, I'm done. I'm going to save this roof. I'm saving it as the name roof, and then coming back to my model. And now, since this was built as a component, if I click this and click reload, I can say I want to reload it with roof, and my 3D roof appears directly back onto my model, exactly where I had built it. And since I had added layers to those roofs, you see those two layers come in, and so now we can just go to our scene 1, and like we've done before, I think we talked about options last time, I'm just going to rename this to scene 01A, and we're going to add and call this 001B, and again on layers, on B I'm going to turn option 1 off and update and go back to 1A, and turn 2 off and update. I'm actually going to add one more, because we're actually going to build one more three-dimensional roof real quick. Option 3. And so I'm going to turn option 3 off in A, update, go to B, I'm going to turn option 3 off in B, update, and I'm going to add one more. I call this one 001C, and put on option 3, even though we don't have an option 3 yet, but it's pre-built for it. So now, what if we wanted barrel tile, which is really the easiest of them all? I'm actually going to just copy this roof. Actually, you know what? I'm going to come back to this roof, because I want to build all of my 3D options over here. I'm going to turn roof 1 and 2 off. And now I'm going to copy this over, because I don't want to affect my original 3D roof, and I'm going to explode this. I'm going to keep exploding it until I can just select the faces and because that's all I wanted to extract out of this, with just the faces, and get rid of everything else. And I think some of you have seen this plugin, and if you haven't yet, it's a phenomenal one. And this is one that we have the one license, but we actually can share this one, and I'll get you guys instructions on how to activate it. And similar to like Lumion and everything and some of those other ones, it can only one computer can be active at a time, but this isn't a plugin that's heavily used from a time perspective. You do it and then you're done, and somebody else can activate it. So again, I'll get those instructions to you guys later. But this is a plugin called Roof NUI, NUI. It's by an architect out in Hawaii, built a ton of these plugins. If you haven't seen his stuff, it's Valley Architects, VALI Architects, and it's just this guy. I don't know how many people he has working for him, but he basically builds all these plugins so that he can buy beer when he goes surfing. That's his intent on building this stuff. But he builds some amazing plugins. So enough background. I'm going to go to, I don't want to make a roof, because this will actually make roofs for you as well. But I like having more control over my roof. So I also want to go to this roof details and click on that. And actually, before I do anything else, I need to add the material that I want to use. So if I go to my materials, there's this material right here called Instant Roof NUI Tiles 2. I was going to add this to my model. And so now if I click home, you see that this material was added to the model. So with that, I can click on, say, what style I want, and I want to add in this Mission S tile. So that's loaded in, and I want to add a material, and now I can select, I don't know why it's not showing up there. Let me just paint something with it. Maybe it's not showing up because it's not painted. Maybe I'll start the app over again. So grab my Mission S, say yes to materials, and there we go. Now we can add the material. Everything else you can pretty much leave as default. So now I have everything loaded into the plugin the way I need it. And I'll just start with this guy. If you select a face, it'll build barrel tile on the face. If you select a line, it'll build a ridge cap on the line. So before I build my roof, maybe I'll just do a quick demonstration here. I'm going to take this roof and turn it into a gable just for a second, just so you can see the difference. So you want to pick any hip line, any ridge line, and any gable line, but you do not want to pick eaves. So what I want to pick are the two gable lines, the ridge line, this face, and I'm going to add in these two hip lines, this face, and I also want to add in these two gable lines. Even though they're little, I still want that detail there. And now all I need to do is say, we have everything preloaded, and just say add in details, and you'll see that it's thinking, and there you go. Barrel tile is added in, and since I said that this was a gable roof right here, you see that it added in this side barrel to create the gable roof. Very similar to here, and that's why we selected that gable roof right here. And then all the hip lines have the ridge tile running along the hip line. So that's the quick version of how this plugin works. If you want to learn more about it, there's a ton of information on this plugin and how to do things. So here I'm just going to, now that I've built my roof, don't want these. If I were to have select these eave lines, it would put a barrel tile ridge line across it, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to kind of do one roof at a time. I just want that piece, and we'll add details. I'm I'm going to undo because that didn't have my material selected. S parameter materials. There we go. Add details. So there's one roof. Even though all of these roofs are connected, you don't have to do all of it together. I tend to like to break it up into little chunks just so the app doesn't go crazy and trying to calculate everything. So from here, these are the only lines I need. I don't have any gables anywhere. I just want these faces and these lines. So we will add detail to that. And if you see down here, you can see the calculation it's doing. And before I get to the turret, I'm going to come back here, and I know that, let me jump to my model just to see what I'm looking at. Yeah, I have a little bit of, you know what, this roof is actually missing a little piece right here. I'm just going to add it on real quick. There we go. Because I want that little piece of gable, that little piece of gable, and that little piece of gable, the complete ridge line, and then the two faces, and that's all I need. And from there we will add details. And there's all that. And it's just, to me, it's just crazy, like the way that you can see that the turret is cut out, like the way it follows the shape of this so well. And if any of you have done any med stuff that has a round turret, hopefully you know the note that we always put on of the roof is to be a true conical roof, meaning that there's no ridge lines, because a lot of times builders will actually do it a cheap way and almost segment this, you know, something like this, however many times they want to segment it. I'm just eyeballing it. And they would actually have these, the same way that this hip has this ridge line, this hip line coming across, they would put that in there and then infill. And it's not the right way of doing it. At least it's not the nice way of doing it. And what's great is this plugin actually does a pretty decent job of doing a true conical roof, meaning the barrel tile gets smaller as it gets up to the top. So it tapers in and creates a really nice roof. So here I don't want the eave again, so I'm just selecting the face. So since I'm not selecting any lines, I'm not creating any ridges. So it's just the face, and clicking add detail. And it'll think for, didn't like that one. Let's try it again. Let me save this before I lose it. Alright, let's try it. It's not, of course that happens when I'm doing it, but it's not liking it for some reason. You know why? I think because my, I know why, because my circle is way too segmented for what it needs. So I'm just going to come in here and see if I can create a new circle for it. Yeah, because it's trying to build the barrel tile based upon my segments, and since my segments are smaller than the barrel tile, it's not fitting in there. So I just need to try and rebuild this real quick. Actually was not expecting to have to do this, but that's all right. I'll try and do it quick. All right, so if I grab this and now, so I was coming back here and changing my segments. I'm going to just drop it back down to something pretty low. say 24. Yeah, I think that'll work. Because again, I'm not building anything off of this, so even though this has quite a big of a segment and arch, like very noticeable, it's not anything that we're really going to build off of. In fact, I'm just going to jump it up to 48 and see if that works. Because the way the roof is going to be built, I think it's going to be a little nicer. And I'm going to offset this until it hits here, just so I have the proper extension. And let's see here. Just going to copy this up. Didn't like that. I think I was missing the center, I think. That's the center. Okay, there we go. I cleaned it up. So hopefully this will work, but so I'm just going to copy this and delete everything else. Put this back in. So now let's see if it'll prove me right or not. I think it should work now. There we go. Now it's working. Yes, that's what it was. The segments were just a little too small for it to work. Yeah, and you can see probably need to go back and play with this a little bit more to really get the segments to work favorably, but that did not come out nice at all. I've had it come out much nicer before. That's all right. Huh. Again, it's all due to the segments. Let me try this one more time. Now that I have this built, I can do it quickly. I'm curious if I drop this down to 24, if it makes it any better. Because I don't know if you know this, but like if I were to, since I'm doing this follow me around a circle, it's building these individual segments based on what the segments of the circle I selected are. So that's why it's doing that. Get rid of all this stuff. Last time, and then we'll move on, whether it comes out nice or not. And if it doesn't come out nice, I'll problem solve it and show it. Yeah, it came out better that time. I'll figure it out and why. Again, you can see it's just something that you need to play with as far as finding the best segments for it to work. But anyway, we got a roof that works well enough. I just made that into a group, and we're going to put this on roof option 3, and we will place this back over top. Turn our other roofs on. So now we have all 3 roofs sitting on top of this thing. And if we come back here and reload with our roof, there we go. Now we have 3-dimensional roofs. So now if I click O1A, you see I have a standing seam roof. O1B, I have a flat tile roof, and O1C, I have a 3D barrel roof. So again, just to reiterate, this definitely takes time, but it's really not that bad once you get the hang of it. But the impact is just phenomenal, at least in my estimation. And just to see if we can get something pretty out of this, because we're pretty much done. But let's see if I can show this of just an example of what it'll look like. Let me do this. There we go. So you can just see how, like in rendering, the roof just looks so much better. Because if I were to turn it off, just how flat it is. Now if I go through all the different variations, um, I don't know what delays you're having there or not, but hopefully it's coming across okay. But I mean, I feel like it just looks so much better, especially the standing seam, and you get those lines in there, and then adding in the flat tile. This obviously doesn't even have material on it yet, and we're going to get into that later on. But just even the shadow lines that you're getting, especially if you were to happen to have a view that's much closer up to it. Let's see if I jump back. So yeah, so there you go. Does Lumion export HDRs? Not that I know of. And just to be aware, this is another plugin called Enscape, Enscape, and we have a floating license for this, and this is another one that all of us can use, but only one can be used at a time. But what's really cool about this, this is just a SketchUp model, and it's rendering my SketchUp model live. And the way it works is it's based off of names of materials. So if hopefully you're seeing this okay. So since this material here is named grass, you can see in the model, I'm going to zoom in on an edge here, you can see that it creates three-dimensional grass live rendering in SketchUp. If I were to take my materials palette, wrong one, come back here. I think I lost my materials palette. Let's see here. Here it is. Okay, so if I were to select this, you see that it has grass in the name. If I were, let me pull up the rendering. If I were to get rid of this name, you can see that live, it goes away. So just by naming it grass, it makes it grass. And so it's pretty cool the way it live links. And that's why when I go to my standing seam roof, which, as you can see, has metal in the name right here, the rendering program renders it out as metal simply because of the name on it. What's interesting is if I were to grab something that has the word water in it and paint something with it, it's a bad choice because you just see the grass underneath. Let me paint this wall. So you can kind of see right there on the edge that it all turns into water. Yeah, it doesn't change the color by name, but this grass, if I come in and edit and make this blue grass, you see it changes the color of the grass in the rendering. Yeah, I mean, it just recognizes, it recognizes colors. So if I come select and I just grab a color, this red, and so maybe I'll come and paint these guys red. You see how it instantly pops up on the rendering. And if I were to rename this material, leaving it, color AE04 and metal, you see now it becomes a shiny red. So anyway, A little bit more than what I was intending to show, but it was more just trying to show what the roof actually does, or how it actually looks within, having being rendered. I think it just adds so much to it. So yeah, so that's three-dimensional roofs. Any questions going on that? I know it's a lot, and it's a lot to digest, and it's something that really is just going to take practice and diving into. But the nice thing is that this is being recorded so that you can have lots of, be able to go back and watch it however many times you need to. And as always, I'm always available for additional questions and talking through any specific things. But hopefully you see what's going on and why I think it makes sense. So I think I talked over myself when I asked if there's any questions, but any other questions? Yeah. All right. Well, next week it's actually going to be a little bit more of the same because we're going to do three-dimensional wall materials, very specifically wall siding, and it's going to be very, very similar, but a little bit different. It's all the same techniques, but again, that just adds so much level of detail into a SketchUp model, especially staying in SketchUp, let alone going out to a rendering. So we'll talk more about that next week. That's it for now. Thanks, guys.